Hey, good afternoon, good evening, happy Friday Eve. I am your host, Tony Twist, joined by Sammy Kiss. This is ATW All Things Wrestling Podcast. How's it going, Sammy?
Doing good. How you doing, Tony?
Not too bad, man. Yeah, so we weren't on last week. I was at the Prescott Pro Wrestling show
Yeah,
here.
that looked like a really good show.
Oh, it was great, man. I mean, it wasn't a big crowd, but the crowd that was there was really into it. I got to see Chris Bay and Gino Rivera um, in the main event, and they put on a hell of a match. And then I just saw Gino Rivera was on AEW Dark. He
Yeah,
just he just wrestled Big Bill, I think,
yeah, yeah. The
formerly.
former Big Cass, former W Morrissey.
There
I
you
like
go.
Big Bill as a good name. It's a good name. Yeah, he looked like he did well. So
Yeah, so big shout out to Gino. If you're watching Gino, him and Chris Bay, they put on a really great match for the local crowd here. And I'm going to go ahead and make an announcement because the promoter wanted me to talk about it. So Prescott Pro Wrestling November 9th is coming back. And in the main event, it's going to be Alex Hammerstone. So
okay, okay,
going to
all
be a
right.
killer main
Yeah,
event. I'm going to
yeah.
be there. I'm going to get to interview Hammerstone. Um,
Are you a big MLW fan?
I have checked out quite a few of their stuff. We've had Alex Kane on the show a couple times. He's in MLW. He had a pretty good feud with Alexander Hammerstone and
Yeah,
Alex Kane. I was getting a tongue twister there, but I know Enzo, formerly Enzo Amore. He went to ML. He had a stint in MLW, right, for a little bit.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think
MLW was not that they're not still doing all right, but they were one of those companies that I think really got hurt by the double whammy of the AEW and then the pandemic, where they were one of those companies that was really catching a lot of fire. I know MGF was there for a while. Tony Schiavone had actually come back to wrestling because of MLW, things like that. So they were getting really hot for there for a while. Not that they cooled off, but it's just like feels like AEW kind of became the new super indie, which kind of cooled off most of the other companies. Other than I guess maybe like GCW still feels kind of like that underground vibe company that it's getting more national awareness, things like that. But MLW was right there,
and then
So that's
they have that lawsuit going on with I think WWE right now
yeah. I
too.
know that they I think they tried to get that dismissed, right? But then they refiled. So that's just they're going to keep trying to try at that because the litigation on that would cost so much more that I think they're probably pushing for settlement as opposed to being where that's the whole thing about those kinds of things is when you attack the big companies, it forces them to go through so much just to answer the questions. If somebody audited you, it's like you've probably got like a filing cabinet versus like WWE's headquarters. They had to go through so much. So it's so yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I like Hammerstone. He's a hoss, so
Have you
that
seen him
that'll be good.
live?
I've never actually seen him in person, no, but I like him. He's a throwback. I like a heavyweight that looks like a heavyweight, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, he definitely is a throwback. I think to me, he feels like a modern day Steiner, Scott Steiner.
that's a good comparison. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Well,
know,
it's weird. And Steiner was one of those weird guys because I think whenever I picture Steiner, I think of like his medieval armor, his world championship run and the
yeah,
gimmick he's basically been doing since. But like but that's not what I really enjoyed. Like I liked it when he was younger, when he was wearing like the
the
colorful
colorful tight.
singlet, and he was
Yeah,
teaming with his brother and stuff like that. That was, I like the Steiners as a team, so
yeah.
uh,
I think they're one of the probably, in my opinion, they're one of the greatest tag teams of all time.
yeah.
The Steiners for sure. They didn't get a big run in WWF.
No,
Probably
they weren't
more.
there for very long.
Yeah,
Um,
more WCW. But yeah, you're talking more the Big Papa Pump. That
yeah,
look. Yeah,
so
I think Hammerstone for some reason he just reminds me of Steiner. He does a lot of the suplexes, the belly to belly, the over the head
yeah.
suplex. Um, yeah, so I'm excited. Um,
How was Chris Bay?
oh, he was awesome. He was awesome. I did about a 5 minute interview with him. He was great, man. He was great on the show. Real nice guy, real down to earth. And I was a little shocked by the size of some of the wrestlers.
Mhm.
Like I picture Chris Bay to be he's not like a real big guy, but just seeing him on video and things like I thought maybe he was like 6 foot, right? I was like, maybe look like a 6 footer, but he was like my height, and
Mhm.
I'm under 6 foot. So I was like, damn. I was like, I was thrown back or kind of taken aback a little bit by the height of some of the guys. Then some of the guys were like fucking mountains. So I was like, okay, yeah, that feels more more like what I would think these guys are gonna look like. They're just, I've been actually about 5 feet behind Steiner when he was Big Papa Pump, and he's not much taller than me, but he's probably like a
5
person
people wide. Yeah. Yeah.
5 people wide, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I've seen Goldberg like
Yeah.
10 feet across from me. I was ringside at Halloween Havoc 1999. Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
Halloween
Where
Havoc 99.
where was
At
that at?
MGM Grand in Vegas.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, they had a arena. They always did Havoc at MGM Grand in Vegas.
Yeah.
So me and my buddy, we had when I lived in Phoenix, we just hopped in the car 4 hours, stayed at a shitty motel,
Yeah.
and then we had ringside tickets to Halloween Havoc, so it was pretty fun.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's not that bad of a drive. So very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah, 4 hour drive is not too bad. It's like when I used to live in Detroit because I'm originally from Michigan, Chicago. It's a 4 hour drive.
Yeah.
Same thing. But anyways, man, I think the biggest news, I mean, a lot of big news going on, but I think the biggest news is going to be Adam Copeland, formerly known as Edge, WWE Hall of Famer. Uh, the rumors had been going on for so long. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, we're going to see. It was the one they did in London, right? They're like, oh, Edge is going to be there. Edge is going to
Yeah.
show up in London. And I was like, Edge is one of those guys I never seen in another company. It was right. It'd be like if you saw Randy Orton showed up in AEW, you'd be like, what the fuck? Really? Like,
Yeah.
no way. That's like mind blowing. So I want to get your response to it, but I'll go ahead and jump to a clip. We got Edge. Formerly known as Edge, Adam Copeland. That's gonna be hard to get used to. So
Yeah.
we got him debuting here. Let's see if I can get my screen to share for our YouTube audience. Here we go. We got Edge at the last pay-per-view. You got audio over there?
Yeah. It's crazy how, like, there have been a few guys, CM Punk, most notably because he came out to Cult of Personality, but there's something about, I guess because it's Edge and he was just there, it feels like this is just his WWE entrance,
Right.
but it's an AEW, and it's not just the music, which is very cool that he still has the same music, which is like, this is not Edge doing a different thing. It's like, this is just, he went from one company and that entire thing moved over here. So it's very kind of surreal. It's like, it's not that dissimilar than when, like when Cody was at WrestleMania, that vibe of like, it's not just that they're here. It's like, it's the same exact person that was just at the other company. Because more often than not, when they show up, there's new music, there's a new vibe. They kind of bring a new packaging to it, and Edge is out here basically looking and acting, behaving the exact same way he was just a few weeks ago when he was on SmackDown.
You really summed it up, and I think that's probably why it feels a little different.
Yeah.
It's still like, I don't.
Well,
I
it's
don't
also
know.
like, I mean, when Daniel Bryan went over, he had just main evented WrestleMania that year, right? That was what, 2 years ago, but Edge was in that same main event, which is not that long ago.
Right.
He was and then he just main evented SmackDown against Sheamus and what ended up being his last WWE match. So it's like when Moxley left, he'd been WWE champion, but they had kind of started like, they knew he was leaving, so they kind of started putting him down the card. And then like Punk hadn't been around for years, and Jericho, like, this is a main eventer. Like, this was a WWE Hall of Famer. This was a guy that was like a featured top guy. Hell in a Cell with Finn Balor at WrestleMania. Like Edge was not just a big name, but like was someone that was being used in a top featured position in one company that's now in the other company. It's different when someone like Miro, someone that's being kind of utilized in a way where you feel like maybe they would go to another company so they could be used better. It didn't. That's not what was going on with Edge. Edge was a featured top guy, won the Royal Rumble, all these things. So it's not just a former Hall of Famer. It's like this is the guy that was main eventing the other show just a few weeks ago, and now he's here.
Right. Well, I want to talk to you about that a little bit more. I'll give you kind of my personal opinion on Edge.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, I loved Edge in the Attitude Era as a tag team champion with Christian, now Christian Cage there in AEW. But to be honest with you, I was just never a big fan of Edge.
Yeah.
His character never resonated with me. I always just saw him as the guy's taking, the 10-second or the 3-second pose, like him and Christian, against the Hardys, against the Dudleys, like that was probably some of the best tag team wrestling ever in WWE. I don't know if you would agree with that. There was just so many amazing tag teams at that time.
Well, what's so weird is up until the Usos and the New Day, I think Edge and Christian had the record for most title reigns as a team. Mm-hmm. Until I think maybe the Dudleys broke it a few years when they did their reunion tour later. But when they won, they were 7-time tag team champions. That all happened within like one calendar year. Like it's, so they came on the scene with the Brood in '99. But then didn't really start catching fire until the end of '99, and then they broke up in the early fall of 2001. So that's just a 2-year run. That's how, and they are considered one of the greatest tag teams of all time. And even the Dudley Boys didn't have that long of a run. They were there from end of '99 till 2004 ish. So it's one of those lightning in a bottle scenarios where there was just a division. Part of the reason why I think when people argue about the Usos or the New Day and their longevity of being one of the greatest teams of all time is that what was the division around them? Who did they wrestle besides each other? Like they were a division amongst themselves, but it's like when Edge and Christian around, the Dudley Boys were there and the Hardy Boys were there, but there was also a company where the Undertaker and Kane were wrestling all the time, where the APA, where Tess and Albert, like there was a division of a hierarchy of teams, which they were at the top of, as opposed to just what it feels like more often than not for the last 20 years in WWE, where there's like maybe 1 or 2 teams total at any time, and then a bunch of kind of ragtag things. There's not really a division. It's hard to be the best in a division if there really isn't a division to have someone being the best of. And they were the really last time there was that resurgence that it felt like the way it was kind of in the 80s when you had the Hart Foundation and the the Rockers and the British Bulldogs and the Killer Bees, and like there was teams that you could have great teams at the top, Demolition, people like that, So yeah, I think arguably they were one of the best teams. But I know what you're saying about Edge. He was one of those. I know when they talk about the SmackDown 6, I always noticed there was this weird thing where they would bring them up when people would talk about it. They go, Chris Benoit, Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero, the Guerreros, so they would put Chavo in there. He's one of the 6. Rey Mysterio. And they would always be this kind of comment of like, and then the always solid Edge. Like Edge was part of it, but people would always kind of do that weird, like he's not on their level, but he's one of those guys in the mix of like that talent that was always in those kick-ass matches in 2002. But he's one of those guys that I always he's a record time world champion and all those things. He's won more titles in WWE than anybody, unless I know that I was talking to somebody about that the other day, that technically the person who's won more championships now in WWE, I think, is R-Truth because of all the 24/7 championships. Which I'm like, don't count that.
It was The Miz. I thought The Miz won more championships than.
He might have broken it by now, but there was a point where I remember there's this great promo where Edge talks about he's won more titles than anyone, and he did this great line where he's like, pick a name, I'm on top of it, which I thought was always really great. But yeah, Miz is a 2-time Grand Slam champion. But even so, like he's one of those guys that's won, you know, 14 tag team titles, 7 intercontinental titles, US, like everything you could think of, he's won it multiple times. So he was always doing something right, but he was never a guy that I felt like was like a 10 in any category, if that
Right.
makes sense. Like he wasn't like the greatest in-ring performer, he wasn't the greatest promo, he wasn't the greatest, and I mean like literally like he wouldn't be on the top of a list for someone in terms of those categories, but he's really, really high in a lot of those categories, or when you add them all up, he becomes, so he's like this guy that's really hard to categorize because you're like, he's not one of the greatest in this specific category, but because he's so good in so many, he's someone that I think is a weird person to put in that kind of echelon, if that makes sense.
No, I mean that makes total sense. And like I said, he was just one of those guys you just always saw he was there. Like, oh yeah, Edge is the champ, and he was like the champ for like a minute. I don't think he ever had any like long reigns. I don't believe, but he's
Well,
just one of those.
yeah, he became one of those guys that it felt like they were pushing new talent, but he was not a transitional champion, but one of those champions that was, they put the title on because they needed someone for the guys they wanted to use to beat. But then he again excelled at that so much that they kept putting him in those positions, which he did really well at.
Right. Yeah. So, I wanted to point out at the beginning of the conversation when you were talking about Edge, you were like, yeah, he was this. Yeah, he was that. Yeah, he was this. So that brings us to now. So
Yeah.
WWE obviously didn't feel he had either the star power, the cachet, um, going forward in this new endeavor TKO WWE era. Do you think they just didn't see Edge um, to be that guy? Like, was it
Um.
worth it to re-sign him? Me as
Well.
not a fan, I'm like, okay, I'm glad. Like, I don't have to work. I really didn't want to see Edge anymore. Right?
Well.
Him going to
I don't.
AEW gives him new life. But sorry, go ahead.
No, you finished. I don't get the impression that WWE didn't want to re-sign him. I
Right.
think they weren't going to whatever the other offer he was, or he just chose the other offer.
Right.
I know he said since that his contract was for no more than 10 matches a year for like the 3 years that he was there. Because he had kind of like that Brock Lesnar contract, that Legends contract, in the sense of being like a special attraction where he wouldn't wrestle all the time, so that when he was there, it would feel more special. Which I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But like when he won the Royal Rumble, I remember feeling like he cut that great babyface promo, but then he turned heel because people weren't really feeling it. And
Yeah.
then he turned back. And then when he did the Judgment Day, I could tell that he wanted to, again, be a bad guy. But
Right.
again, it felt like something wasn't working. So it did feel like over the last couple years, the first year, I think he was doing pretty much what everyone expected when he had that rivalry with Randy. But since then, it kind of felt like there's a disconnect in what he seemed to be wanting to do and what the company felt was working or not. But I doubt that that is why he was there, as much as it would have probably been more of that kind of the same. Like I thought him putting over Grayson Waller was great, and he could have continued to do those kinds of things, wrestling with young talent and wrestling with new names. He said that in that promo where like there's a lot of new people he's never wrestled in AEW, but there were still a lot of people in WWE he never wrestled that he could have worked matches with too. I think it's more, what he said, like he wanted to work with Christian. The fact that Christian was cleared to wrestle by WWE because he was in that Royal Rumble match, but then they wouldn't sign him, or they didn't want to do anything with Christian. I'm sure it was kind of a bummer, because if Edge was going to retire, probably sooner than later, I doubt he wants to leave without doing something again with Christian. So I feel like that's a shoot. Like that's true, that like he's there because he's got a bucket list. He was able to finish out his career. He wants to do all the things he wasn't able to do before he was forced out. And I would just assume that one of those things would be to work again with Christian. And if WWE won't bring Christian back, or if Christian can't now because he's with AEW and doesn't, he's good there, that would be a big pull for him to go in that direction. Yeah.
What kind of run do you actually see him having?
I don't know. It's weird that he's 49, right? So
No, I thought he was 51.
is he 51? I mean, that's
So,
not
but I
that
mean,
different.
he's in his 50s though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and Sting is a lot older, so and he's still what's he doing? But no, I've always looked at this. The impression I get from what he's saying about this run is that he was forced to retire and kind of moved on.
Right.
And in moving on, had the surgery where he suddenly felt better, and that was given a kind of a second chance to go and do things on his own terms. But the thing about that is that when you love something so much, it's hard to walk away from it. Like you talk about the Undertaker. There's an interview that the Undertaker did for like that documentary they shot at WrestleMania 19. That's in 2003, where the Undertaker's talking about how he pretty much done everything and that this is just fun, and he was thinking about retiring a couple years ago, and this might be done.
Right.
That was back in 2003.
Right.
He was saying that.
Yeah.
And so it depends. Like, I know Tony Khan, what he tweeted this is the beginning of a new era. I know that he says he wants to wrestle more often. He hasn't had a heavy schedule. He has only been working a light schedule where he's had rest time and things like that. Will that take a toll on him, and will that affect what he does or doesn't do, or what the company chooses to use him for or not? I think making him, the top guy is a very plausible thing. But I think more than anything, he just wants to go and do something with Christian, which is already off to a great start. So,
right. So you don't see them putting them in like the main event picture.
Well, it's weird. I think they can. The only problem with that is it continues this trend of the main event scene in AEW being monopolized by former WWE names.
Yeah.
Which I am sure they want to steer clear of. I mean, they're doing great with MJF right now. I don't think the Adam Page thing worked as well as they'd wanted to. But with Punk gone, it kind of feels like a lot of the long-term ideas they had are kind of out the window now. Like, I imagine the stuff now going on with him and Adam Cole was allowed to breathe more and is allowed to go in some new directions because they were clearly building to an MJF CM Punk thing. Right. And whether that would have meant Punk taking the title off the MJF or not, or how long or what that would have worked, that's not going to happen now. Right. So what do they do with that in the sense, I always think in terms of like, who's going to be the guy to take off of MJF, and who's going to be strong in the company on top when that happens. Moxley's a guy they can always return to, but Moxley's someone that they've done that with so much. What's the point of that? And Daniel Bryan just said he doesn't want to be in the main event anymore. You got guys like Kenny Omega. You got Adam Page, who could then always go back to. They're building up Swerve Scott, Swerve Strickland. So there's that. So he's a name that I feel like, why not? Why not do MJF versus Adam Copeland? Why not do Adam Copeland on top? I mean, for all hell, why not put Christian on top? Because he's been doing so great in his position too. So it's good that it feels like the door's kind of open for it to be anybody. WWE has more of a ceiling on that. You can kind of see, unless things drastically change, there are guys already now where you're like, this guy's not going to beat him. This guy's going to beat him. They've got a lot more guys than they used to. Like Cody Rhodes is someone that I think everyone really feels will win the title at some point. And I like that the world title is not less than, but less than enough that it feels plausible that Nakamura could win the title. It feels plausible that Damian Priest could be champion, that Finn Balor could be champion. Whereas Roman is someone where it's like, who the hell is going to beat this guy, that we feel that they would want to put over Roman Reigns. Whereas in AEW, even if they don't have anyone ready right now, it feels like there's always more opportunity for it to be kind of anybody. Even if it really isn't going to be anybody, it feels like it could be anybody. So why
Now,
not?
so you brought up CM Punk. Already
Yeah,
rumors flying that Survivor Series is in Chicago at the end of
yeah,
November.
yeah.
What are the odds that we see CM Punk show up?
The odds,
If you were
it's
a betting
weird.
man,
If I was a betting man, well, so it depends on how strong this new TKO situation influences those kinds of things, because they're already showing their hand and wanting Vince McMahon to be more involved. Whether they're acknowledging that on or not, you can tell that that's a thing. And some changes have happened since the merger.
right,
The Rock, and then there's the strike and Cena being back and the Rock being back. Those are two big names. Do you want to bring in Punk if you've already got a lot of other things going on? If Punk comes in, what is he going to do? Why are you bringing Punk back in? Is he going to just work a full-time deal? Are you bringing him into, like where does he fit into the company? And I think that's the question they would be asking. Is it that more to spite AEW because he didn't get along with a lot of the guys that are on top there now?
right.
At the same time, when he left, the number one thing he'd seemed like he was frustrated about when he left is that he was hurt and hurt and hurt and didn't want to work the schedule while he's hurt all the time.
Right.
And there's a quote from the Cabana podcast where he's like, where can I get the Brock Lesnar schedule? Well, I feel like at this point he could get that Brock Lesnar schedule. So it's not like people always assume that if you bring him in that he would have to work the same schedule everybody else is. And maybe he would, and I wouldn't be. I'm a CM Punk fan. Like I would be very open to that. But you can bring him in for a limited program. You can bring him in for limited dates. Like there are ways to do it where it's not this scenario that I think people think, well, that wouldn't work or because of this, this, and this. Like, well, it doesn't have to be this, this, and this. So is it possible? Yeah. I don't know if I would bet that it would happen, but it wouldn't surprise me. I would love it to happen. I would love for them to mend fences. I always think whenever people leave WWE in a sour way, I want them to kind of make amends and, for people to come back just because it makes me feel better about the whole situation.
So did you hear what Shawn Michaels said?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If anybody carries weight, it's going to be Shawn. And
Well, yeah.
he said he would love to see CM Punk
Yeah.
back in the WWE.
Well, it's a scenario where so AEW is by their own admission, a company for the boys by the boys, and Tony Khan is the head now with that has shifted so much, but it has shown that there are issues in AEW because it's structured very differently than WWE, right? That I think some of the worries that people have about how Punk would be, I don't think would be an issue in WWE because it's just structured differently, if that makes
Right.
sense.
I totally get that. He's not going to
Yeah.
be able to run roughshod over
Yeah.
everyone that, he's just like, he's
So
going to come in and, I'm sure
yeah,
any agreement, they're going to have a talking and be like, hey, you're coming back in this locker room, this is
yeah.
how
Well,
it's,
that's
this is
that's
how
the
it's
thing.
going to
Yeah,
look.
yeah. So I don't think that would be. I don't foresee that being an issue in terms of they wouldn't do it. I think it would be something brought up. It would be a concern, but I don't think it's something where they would go, no, we're definitely not going to do this because of this kind of thing or whatever, that kind of thing. I think for business, if it's the right, what's best, it's what's best for business. As no pun intended, the cliche, but what's best for business. And I think WWE and Triple H, more as a point, wants to send a positive message in terms of WWE's perception in the
Right.
business, and that's been something that he's been doing since he took over, is to break this perception of being a place that you don't want to go to. A couple of years ago, the vibe with AEW was even being able to be created was it's toxic. Don't go to WWE. We don't want to go there. If you go there, you get called up. You're gonna career's over. They don't know what to do with anybody. All these people should jump ship and go to AEW where people will care. And I think Triple H has been doing his best to change that. I mean, not everyone's a success story, but it's not for not giving them an opportunity and or for him holding people down in the sense that that was kind of this narrative that had been created with Vince McMahon. So what better message to send to talent than for Triple H to be like, hey, that guy that everyone says that I can't get along with, that guy that, we can't work with, that we can't make this work, and then he makes it work with. It makes it feel like it's a different company than it was before in terms of anybody can come over here and anybody can, it's why the Cody Rhodes things was so important.
Right.
Bringing him
Is,
in,
is it is it a big blow to AEW if Punk comes?
I think so. I mean, their numbers in terms of attendance has not been great since he left, but
No.
that's I think just was going to happen inevitably. Um, it's just the nature of the way they run shows and things like that. I don't think that's a knock on Punk, but I don't think that's on Punk either. Um, but I think in terms of just like the Jade Cargill thing, it frames itself more as AEW used to be the place that everybody was going to, and now WWE is becoming the place that everybody's going to. You know,
Well, you brought us into a perfect segue. Jade Cargill going to WWE. I mean,
yeah.
this is not anything like Edge going to AEW. Adam Copeland, a guy that's maybe trying to revive his career in a different setting. That
Yeah.
that makes sense. But now you're talking about somebody that could be a future WWE just mega superstar. She's got the look. She looks like
Oh
a
yeah.
she looks like a superhero. I think her in ring ability hasn't been the best, but I think she was improving.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and I would love to know what you think WWE is going to how they're going to handle this because they're already announcing that she's going to be on Raw. Like that's going to
Yeah.
like so she's
I
not
know.
starting NXT.
Yeah, that was a big thing. I'm nervous that that's going to turn into a Chad Gable thing.
Mhm.
Hopefully, it won't be. But if they truly prioritize her, or she's someone that they protect in that manner, I think it'll be all right. It's just WWE is more often than not a lion's den in terms of you get thrown into the fire and you need to know how it works or not. AEW has more of a when you watch AEW Dark, they get a lot of young talent, a lot of indie talent, a lot of guys that don't have the experience, and there's this atmosphere of kind of giving people room to breathe and to learn. And you hear that narrative a lot of people going like, well, they're just getting started. Like they're improving and getting better. It never feels like that in WWE. The idea of people not knowing what they're doing is kind of the opposite. They go like, why are you on TV? You should go back to NXT. You should go do this. There's not um that sense of forgiveness if you don't know how to work on the main roster.
Right.
Nia Jax is a good example of people, ripping her up online because of that same kind of thing. Would they do that to Jade Cargill? I don't know. I think she's not bad. She's just limited. When you get that run, that Goldberg kind of thing where you're not wrestling matches really, you're doing angles. You're not
Right.
working that much. It's hard to say how good she is or isn't because she's not doing much. And then if you put her in that position to do that, how would she do well? And then that goes into will they put her in that position or not? I think with how strong they want to present her, now they need someone strong, they're going to give her time. And if they bring her in and they build it up, it'll give her time to build. I mean, like, let's say, I'd say cards, predictions, they've been building up Rhea Ripley as someone who can beat up man or woman, and they have Nia Jax is supposed to be, she's not like most girls. She's not going to take out Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley will take out Nia. Who's next? You bring out Jade Cargill. You slow build Jade Cargill taking on Rhea Ripley. And if you do that match, that's a big match. You could do that at the Royal Rumble. You could do that at WrestleMania. But both of those matches, either way, would be a long time from now. So that gives her time to go to the performance center and work on things for them to test out her limitations and figure out those things. So I think it'll be fine. I think they know what they're doing. I don't think they would put anybody in a position to fuck up royally on national television because it would make them look bad. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this changes things a little bit when it comes to the women's division.
Oh yeah.
For both companies, because I think they were really banking, no pun intended, on bringing in Sasha Banks, now Sasha Monet,
Yeah.
into AEW. But now that Jade Cargill went to WWE, I kind of see Sasha Banks going back to WWE. I don't see her. She's too phenomenal of a wrestler. I don't see her going to AEW because I don't think the caliber of talent is there for her.
Well, and that's kind of the thing that we were talking about with Edge, is that it doesn't feel to me like there was a like there's no bad blood. It's just things weren't great in the sense of like, we don't really need you. And he's like, I don't really, I'm just having fun, so I'll go somewhere else where I can just go have fun. Things just happened. He didn't quit WWE. His contract ran out. He went somewhere else. I know when he first came back, he never said that AEW, but he did say, like, the other guys, they made him a contract offer. And out of respect to Vince McMahon, he brought it to Vince's attention, gave him the option to sign him instead. So I think he was never not interested in going to AEW. I always figured he would go there for, at some point just to test it out because of that aspect, unless WWE really, really wrapped him up or if he retired, all those kinds of things.
Right.
Sasha Banks is one of those people that was a WWE fan for so long that it wouldn't surprise. Most people, I would say, there are people like John Moxley. I don't expect to ever go back to WWE.
No,
But if he did, I wouldn't be like, I can't believe it. I can't. There's no one I don't think that I wouldn't believe goes to WWE, or vice versa. There are people that are indoctrinated in WWE because they've been there their whole careers, their whole lives, and AEW's too young. Like if MJF ends up staying in AEW and he's there for 20 years, you might think like, oh, he's never going over there. But at the same time, we said that about Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho was a WWE lifer. He's quoted as saying he's never going to go wrestle anywhere else. And then now he's in AEW. Now he's saying, I'm never going to leave AEW. I'm never going to go anywhere else. So,
so do you think, do you think Sasha Monet shows back up in WWE? Do you think it's changed now because Jade Cargill jumped ship and she was like, they were building her up as like, their monster, and now she's leaving? I'm not a big fan of Saraya, formerly known as Paige. I don't think she's enticed enough to go to AEW just to wrestle her because they wrestled before.
So, but like when Sasha started in WWE, it's not like she signed with WWE because she was like the greatest women's roster in the world. It wasn't at the time. Like the Divas thing was a full swing. Like that was what it was. She was one of the women to come in to change that. So she's always been someone that I've seen as, she doesn't go places in terms of this is a place that I think is already great, as much as she has the mentality to, I'm going to be great and make this place great. Right. So, I actually really thought she might have ended up in TNA. She just knows she's worth so much that I think TNA can't afford to pay her what I think she thinks she can get from either New Japan or AEW. But in terms of she just wants to wrestle and wrestle top talent, that's either company. There are great women in WWE. There are great women in AEW. So it just depends on what she wants to do. If management stops giving her the runaround, we still don't know, and we never will know exactly what happened between her and all the people in the ups and stuff like that. But if you're frustrated and you're asking for something to be this, and they keep saying no, or they keep saying yeah, and then it doesn't happen, you're not going to work there anymore. You're going to go work somewhere else. But that can always change. People change, people leave. This is a different company. It's not Vince McMahon's company anymore. Different people in charge. So you never know.
With that being said, I'm going to make the prediction. I think we see Sasha Banks show back up WWE 2024 at the Royal Rumble.
Oh wow, okay.
I'm throwing that out right now. I don't think she's going to go to AEW. I think she might have been like trying to see how things played out, maybe, and kind of
Well, there are
teasing
people.
that.
I mean, it's like when Drew McIntyre went and did stuff. I kind of think of it like that in sense of like I mean, obviously she left with all the hoopla, but like I kind of always thought she would end up back in WWE. But she's not going to go there until she's kind of done her stuff. So I don't know if it wouldn't surprise me. Like I can see that happening, but it wouldn't surprise me if that happens further down the line that she does do some stuff with AEW, but it's more of a short-term thing. She wrestles some matches, she does some stuff with some things, and then finds her way back to WWE. But we'll see. We'll see.
Well, with all the contract talk and all these wrestlers, and looks like just moving and shaking happening all over the place, the big contract that's coming up is MJF. He's been talking about it, seems like forever now.
The war for 2024. Yeah.
Right? What
Yeah.
is I don't see this going any other way. He's going to WWE. Do you see him re-signing with AEW at all?
So the thing about Max is that he's really young.
Right.
Like he just got started. In terms of his career, he's like in his early 20s still, I believe, right?
I think
Which means 25. Okay. There was this weird adage I remember hearing a few years ago that they say you don't really hit your stride until you're like 37. So if let's say that's true, he's got 12 years until he's even in his prime, right? That's a lot of time for him to stay in AEW and still go to WWE. I think for him more than anything, it's about leveraging his position so that he can continue to leverage his position in the future. I know people don't like to look at wrestling in terms of that, but it is a business, and not just a business in terms of. Well, like it's not just if you care about
athletes, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's not just like I care about making this much money. It's that if you're paying this guy this much money, you're putting him in this position on the show. Otherwise, why are you paying him that much money? That's how wrestling companies work. You're not going to pay someone 7 figures and then not keep them in main events. That doesn't make any sense, right? So sometimes it's not even about they're not offering me enough money. It's that they don't value me at this level. They value me at this level.
Right.
And if he feels he's worked his ass off to be at this level and then they're still not offering him what he feels that level should be, and another company is, he's going to go to the other company. But conversely, if that has all shifted and that's changed, I believe, personally, I think he's already signed. I think they're acting like his contract's coming up, but that he has a deal already made and that he'll be with AEW for a little longer. I started thinking that whenever he started doing those promos, that like part of that was the negotiation for those things. I don't know if, I don't know that at all. It's just, I always think when something gets brought up on television that it's not an issue. But I mean, we all said that about the Cody Rhodes thing. So who the hell knows, right?
Well, according to the dirt sheets, he has not signed a contract extension. You could take that for whatever you want, but that's what all the dirt sheets are saying. He hasn't signed an extension, and it's going to be the war for 2024 for.
Well, we'll see.
MJF.
He's someone that I think is definitely someone that would succeed in WWE. He's one of those guys that there are some guys in AEW that feel like WWE performers.
Wardlow one of them.
Jade Cargo Wardlow is one of them. I think Ricky Starks is one of them. There are people that just their style of wrestling, but they just feel like they would fit in a future WWE in just the terms of their vibe. Like there are some people that come off and some people come off as indie wrestlers, some people come off as WWE superstars. I don't know what that is,
right. Well, I mean, it's a look, man. I mean, I just no knock on him. I like him, but a guy like Orange Cassidy, you're never going to see in WWE.
Well, I don't necessarily think that. I think Orange Cassidy would be someone that not only could sign with WWE, but could be well, but he doesn't come off like someone that should be in WWE. He comes off
What about Darby Allin? He's a guy that I would see never be in WWE.
You say that, but then it's like you need people to throw around. Like I'm not comparing Darby to him, but Spike Dudley had a very long, successful career in WWE.
But he also had the Dudley Boys,
That's true.
in front of him.
I'm just saying, like, there's a place for everybody. Like, I think everyone looks at people on the roster and they think, could this guy be WWE champion? And if the answer is no, they don't think they should go to WWE. And I don't think that most people are not going to be WWE champion. And newsflash, most people are not going to be AEW champion. Not everybody's going to be champion. There's a place for everybody on the card, and it's just about what you need. There were years ago, WWE said, we don't want anybody that's under 6'5" or less than 250 pounds. And then like 2 years later, they were like, we don't want anybody that's taller than 6'1" or weighs more than 200 pounds. It's like, it's the opposite of each other because it's just what they need. So it just depends on the year. It depends on the right place and the right time.
Well, Sammy, I know you got to run. Tell everybody about the show this weekend.
Oh man, we got it. Yeah, if you're listening to this and you're in the New Orleans area, we got a huge show this Saturday, Wildcat Sports. It's going to be live in Kenner, Louisiana. Visit wildcat.eventbrite.com, or you can visit our website at wildcatsports.com. It's going to be a great show. Brady Pierce versus PJ Hawks, Danny Flamingo versus Rob McKnight. Great show from top to bottom. Make sure you come check it out. I'll be there. You should be there too.
Thank you, Sammy. As always, it's a pleasure. I'm your host, Tony Twist. This is ATW All Things Wrestling Podcast. Thank you, Sammy Kiss from Wildcat Sports, for joining us today. Tons of wrestling news and tons of stuff we didn't get to talk about, but hey, man, it's an exciting time to be a wrestling fan. That's for damn sure. Sammy, hope you have a great event this weekend.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
And this is ATW All Things Wrestling, and we're out of here.